All right, welcome. Today we're going to dive into one of the most important texts in Shia Islam, Al-Kafi. And, this isn't just some dry book of rules. It's actually a really deliberate journey of understanding, and it starts with the very tools God gave us to think and reason in the first place. So let's follow that path and see where it takes us, starting with why this book was even written.
So, picture this. The story of Al-Kafi actually kicks off with a request. A scholar reaches out to the compiler, Al-Kulayni, and he's basically saying, look, we're confused about our religion. There's so much out there. We wish we had one single comprehensive book that would be sufficient. And that word in Arabic, it's Kafi. This book was the answer to that plea.
To really get a grip on its influence, we're going to follow the book's own logic. We'll start with the history, then explore its incredible focus on the intellect, see how that naturally leads to a quest for knowledge, and then we'll tackle the huge question of how to know God. And finally, we'll see how all of this points to the text's conclusion, the need for a divine guide.
Okay, so first things first, let's set the scene. The man behind this massive undertaking was Muhammad ibn Ya al-Kulayni, and he was a scholar living in a really pivotal, and I mean unique, period of Islamic history.
Now, what's so incredible about Al-Kulayni is his timing. He was actually alive at the same time as all four ambassadors of the 12th Imam, and this wasn't just a lucky coincidence. It meant he had a direct, reliable channel to the very sources of the teachings he was gathering. This made his work exceptionally authoritative. In fact, historians back then didn't just call him a scholar, they called him the religious chief of his era.
So with that context, let's look at how the book is actually put together. And what's so fascinating is where it begins. Al-Kafi doesn't kick off with prayers or laws. Nope. It starts with the absolute foundation of faith, the intellect. The core idea of the whole book is that to truly believe, you first have to understand.
The text uses this key term, aql. Now, we translate that as intellect or reason, but it's so much more than just being smart. Al-Kafi presents aql as this kind of divine light, the main tool God gives us to recognize truth, to understand His signs, and to really get the message of the prophets. So you see, faith and reason aren't enemies here at all. Reason is the very gateway to faith.
And to really hammer home how important this is, listen to this powerful narration. According to the text, God speaks directly to the intellect, calling it the most beloved of all His creations. I mean, that's a radical idea, right? Our ability to reason isn't just some human trait. It's a divine gift that comes with huge responsibility. It's the very basis for both reward and punishment.
To make this idea even more concrete, the text gives us this amazing metaphor. It describes intellect and ignorance as two generals, each with their own army of character traits. So on one side, you have virtues like patience, forgiveness, and love. Those are the soldiers in the army of intellect. And on the other side, you've got their opposites, impatience, revenge, and hatred, all fighting for ignorance. Our spiritual life, then, is basically the battlefield between these two forces inside us.
Okay, so if the intellect is this incredible God-given tool, what are we supposed to do with it? Well, according to Al-Kafi, its main job is to actively go out and pursue knowledge. It's not enough to just be irrational, you have to use that reason to learn.
And the text is crystal clear on this. It quotes a saying from the Prophet Muhammad that makes the search for knowledge a religious duty. This isn't just a friendly suggestion for academics, it's a command for every single believer. Your intellect needs to be constantly learning.
And just to show how much this applied knowledge is valued, Al-Kafi makes this absolutely stunning comparison. A single scholar who actually uses their knowledge for good is considered better than 70,000 worshippers who are just going through the motions without that deep understanding. 70,000.
But, and this is a big but, not all knowledge is the same. The text draws a very sharp line between knowledge that comes from authentic sources, like the Quran and the teachings of the Prophet and his family, and knowledge that's just based on personal opinion or flawed reasoning, which it calls analogy. And there's this really stark warning from an Imam. Many people before have been destroyed because of analogy. The message is clear. Use your intellect to find real, authentic knowledge, not to just make things up.
Okay, so we've got our tools, intellect, and the pursuit of true knowledge. Where does this all lead? Well, it leads to the ultimate goal, knowing God. This section of the book is about Tawheed, the oneness of God, and it tackles some of the deepest questions of our existence. And this is the central paradox, isn't it? If God is infinite, eternal, completely unlike anything in creation, how can our little finite human minds even begin to comprehend Him?
Our senses can't see or hear him, and our words fail when we try to describe him. So how is knowing God even possible?
The answer Al-Kafi gives is just beautiful. It says, we don't know God through direct observation, but through his signs, through his creation. The entire universe becomes this incredible book that we're meant to read with our intellect. And when we do that, our hearts can see him through the reality of faith. It's a type of knowledge based on looking at the world around us, from the stars in the sky to our own heartbeat, and recognizing the artist in the art.
To illustrate this, the book shares this absolutely brilliant story. Someone tries to stump an imam with a trick question. Can God fit the whole world inside an egg without making the egg bigger or the world smaller? It sounds impossible, right? But the imam flips the question. He points to the man's own eye and asks him what he sees: the sky, the mountains, the whole landscape. And then he says, the same God who can fit that entire vast panorama into the tiny pupil of your eye can certainly fit the world into an egg. Divine power just doesn't play by our limited physical rules.
And this brings us full circle. It's the logical endpoint of the entire argument. If our intellect is vital but also has its limits, and if God's true nature is beyond our full understanding, how do we bridge that gap?
Well, this leads directly to the final pillar of Al-Kafi's case, the absolute need for a divinely appointed guide.
And that guide is the Imam. Now, in the framework of Al-Kafi, the Imam isn't some politician chosen by people. No, they are a spiritual and intellectual authority appointed by God. They are the guardians of that true, protected knowledge passed down from the Prophet, the ones who can help us navigate the complexities of faith when our own reason hits a wall.
So here you can see the whole journey laid out, plain as day. You start with the intellect God gave you. You use that intellect to seek out real knowledge. That knowledge leads you to reflect on God's signs in the world around you. And that reflection, that contemplation, shows you the limits of your own understanding, which brings you to the final step, realizing the need to follow a divine guide.
So what makes the Imams qualified for this incredible role? Well, according to Al-Kafi, they have access to some exclusive, inherited sources of knowledge. And these are not ordinary books. We're talking about Al-Jamia, a massive parchment 70 yards long, supposedly containing every detail of religious law dictated by the Prophet himself. Then there's the Mushaf of Fatima, a text said to contain knowledge of future events. And other sources like Al-Jafr and the collected wisdom from every single prophet since Adam. This is what sets the Imam apart as the ultimate religious authority.
So, as we've seen, Al-Kafi is so much more than just a list of traditions. It's laying out a whole philosophy of how we come to know things. It argues for this amazing teamwork between reason and revelation, where our own intellect is the starting point, that if we use it right, leads us to see our own need for the divine guidance that's been preserved and passed down through the Imams.
And that leaves us with this one last question to chew on, which really gets to the heart of Al-Kafi's message. The book celebrates the intellect. It puts it right at the center of faith. But it also knows its boundaries. The entire structure of the book, this entire journey we've just walked through, is really an answer to this very question, pointing us toward a path where our human reason and divine guidance can finally meet.